I want to talk a little bit about Florida. Your governor, Ron DeSantis, is doing victory laps right now. Republican registered voters are now outnumbering Democratic registered voters in the state of Florida for, I think, for the first time. Can you tell me why you think Republicans are doing so well in that state?
Yeah, some of it, a lot of it's messaging, I think. What's really interesting in the state of Florida is when people are allowed to directly vote for policy, they actually vote democratic values and democratic policies. For example, restoring felons' rights. That was a ballot initiative that was overwhelmingly supported by the population in Florida. Additionally, medical marijuana was the same thing, and raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Those were direct ballot initiatives that were voted on by the voters of Florida that passed overwhelmingly. There just seems to be something that happens when we have our representational government that a lot of those initiatives don't pass.
Christine Honchovsky is the state representative for District 96 in the state of Florida. She formerly served as the mayor of Parkland, Florida, and as Parkland City Commissioner. Despite being in a state with a Republican-dominated legislature, Christine managed to pass legislation and secure funding for her district during her freshman legislative session. She was endorsed by Pete Buttigieg in 2020. She testified in front of the U.S. House of Representatives on the need for universal background checks, and she is running for re-election in Florida's 95th district. You can help her out and find out more about her at her website, christineforflorida.com. I want to speak about a couple of the bills that, some of the legislation that you're working on that you're trying to get passed. One in particular is House Bill 559, which helps military families who get shuffled from state to state.
Yeah. So what it is when military personnel get moved around, if their spouse has an occupational license, they have to refile and get approvals every time they move with their military spouse. So what this bill would do is any military spouses who have an occupational license and their spouses actively working in the military, they would kind of be moved to the head of the line. So it wouldn't be changing any of the regulation, but giving them an opportunity to more quickly get settled in Florida, and also it would waive the fee. And I actually have a co-prime sponsor on that who's a Republican and a veteran, and we're going to be working together on that one.
And there's also, I think it's Bill, is it 527, the ghost gun legislation?
Yeah.
And ghost guns, we're talking about like kits to make your own gun, or even 3D printers. People have made guns using a 3D printer. No serial number, no way to sort of trace them. Is that the basis of that bill that you're sponsoring?
Yeah, and it's just to put the same restrictions on those types of firearms as we have on any other type of firearm, that you have to go through a background check and that it has to have a serial number. So it was interesting, the morning we were doing press for that bill, I went online and I just Googled ghost gun, and a website came up where they were selling 80% finished firearm kits. So it's 80% finished, gets mailed to your home, and you just do the other 20% and you have a firearm that you didn't need a background check for, and that doesn't have a serial number. And actually this website encouraged people who wanted to stay incredibly anonymous to pay with cash so that there would be no trace. And this isn't about restricting firearm ownership or adding any additional laws. It's about the current laws keeping up with the technology we now have available and making sure that the spirit of the system we already have in place, that is adhered to with any kind of new technology, including, like you mentioned, the 3D printing.
Should anyone happen to Google the date of February 14th, 2018, they will be confronted with one of the great tragedies of our country's history, and that's the Marjorie Douglas high school shooting. I believe 17 were killed, 17 injured, not counting the emotional and psychological toll that the event took on hundreds, if not thousands, of other people. You have worked tirelessly for tighter gun control measures. Why is this so hard for our country? And what do we have to do to find common ground to get things done?
This goes back to what we started off talking about. Actually, if you talk to most people, and if you look at any polling that's done, a high percentage of people actually agree with universal background checks. It just seems that once it's the representatives for the people who are voting, that it doesn't happen. And a lot of this also has to do with competing narratives that are out there. But for example, after the shooting, Senate Bill 7026 passed in the Florida legislature, and I had gone up supporting that bill, even though I didn't like everything in it. But one of the things that did pass with that bill is the red flag law. So Florida is one of the states that has a red flag law, which means if you could be harmful to yourself or someone else, that you go in front of a judge, and a judge can decide whether or not it's safe for you to have a firearm. You go through due process. That person could technically, who has the red flag, could technically go out and get a gun through a private sale and not go through a background check. The importance of a background check is not to, make it more difficult for people who are, responsible firearm owners, but to make sure firearms aren't getting into the hands of someone who would do harm to themselves or someone else. Now, does that mean it will stop everything? No, but it's one more tool in the toolbox, and it's actually a public safety tool. And I think that's the part that people don't think about. But like I said in the beginning, if you were to poll people, it's overwhelmingly, there is support for universal background checks. I think it's a lot of the narrative and there's a disconnect between where the people are on that issue and where the people who represent the people are on that issue. And I think that's part of the problem that we're coming across more and more in this political system.